discussion. So I am going to begin recording. Hello and welcome back to Welty at Home, the slow reading virtual book club that alternates works by Eudora Welty with works by authors connected to Welty. Today we are continuing our exploration of Eudora Welty's only children's novel, The Shoe Bird. In the coming weeks, we will also begin to look at other writings by Welty related to children's literature. I am Anna Traylor, the education specialist at Eudora Welty House and Garden, and we are grateful to Suzanne Mars, Eudora Welty's friend and biographer and professor emerita of Millsaps College, for guiding these discussions. And we are especially grateful to be joined by special guests today who I will let Suzanne introduce a little bit in just a moment. First, some quick housekeeping. To comment or ask a question, click the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and select raise hand. If you're on a tablet or a phone, you may have to tap the screen for this option to appear. A lively discussion also takes place in the chat, so be sure to glance over at that chat box every now and again. And this series, I am collecting the weekly chat transcript to share at the end of our sessions. If you'd like a copy before the series is complete, just send an email to info@eudoraweltyhouse.com. And with that, Suzanne, where shall we begin today's discussion?
All right. Well, today we're going to talk very briefly about Lehman Ingalls' libretto and score for a ballet that was performed in Jackson on April 20th, 1968. Our very own Susan Shands Jones played the mother quail in that production, and her sister Nancy was the 12-wired bird of paradise. So we'll talk briefly about that. And we're going to spend most of our time today talking about The Shoe Bird, Eudora's Fable by Samuel Jones, which was commissioned by the Mississippi Boy Choir and introduced in 2002. They had a whirlwind tour of 11 performances throughout the state of Mississippi. And Sam just told me this is what Lester Center was the speaker, did the birds, was the narrator, was marvelous. And so I'm sorry we've lost Lester. This was also performed in Seattle in 2002. It has subsequently been performed in many other venues, including Greensboro, North Carolina, where both Sam and Eudora were in the audience and talked about the production, and in Palm Beach, Florida, where the Palm Beach Symphony performed it, and you may have been able to listen to that performance online. I did last night, and I thought it was very good. So let me introduce our three guests that we have today, and then we'll start our discussion. Samuel Jones is a Mississippi boy who made good in a big way. We're mighty proud of him. He moved through the ranks of small American orchestras to become the conductor of a major American orchestra, the Rochester Philharmonic. Then he earned similar success in a different venue when he founded and served as dean of the Shepherd School of Music at Rice University. And even when he was serving as dean, he continued to compose a substantial body of very distinguished pieces. I think it was while you were dean, Sam, that you composed two for Millsaps College, one Chronicles of Time and the other one of great interest to Welty people, The Trumpet of the Swan, based on those final lines from the Golden Apples. After stepping down as dean at Rice, Sam continued at the Shepherd School as professor of conducting and composition and as director of graduate studies, and he spent a total of 24 years at Rice. In 1997, he retired from full-time academic life, and he and his wife moved to Seattle, where he accepted an appointment as composer in residence at the Seattle Symphony. He served 14 years in that position, the longest such tenure in American orchestral history. Sam is the recipient of numerous awards for his composition, including a Grammy nomination for the Seattle Symphony recording of his work for children, The Shoe Bird. He received a Ford Foundation Recording Publication Award, a Martha Baird Rockefeller grant. He's received NEA grants. He received the Seattle Symphony Artistic Recognition Award, the Houston Symphony Distinguished Service Award, and 6 music awards from the Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters, as well as its Lifetime Achievement Award. As a conductor, Sam has performed in many of the world's great concert halls, including Carnegie Hall and Avery Fisher Hall. His compositions include 3 symphonies, 6 concertos, and many other orchestral works, as well as works for chorus and orchestra, opera, and chamber groups. Margaret Thomas, you'll see her down there. Margaret, wave your hand to us. There she is. Margaret Thomas, Mississippi is greatly in your debt, Margaret, because Margaret is the person who envisioned and created the Mississippi Boy Choir in 1995. It is now 30 years old and going strong. And it was Margaret's idea that the Mississippi Boy Choir could perform the Shoebird, and she is the inspiration behind Sam's libretto and score. Margaret holds degrees with honors from Colin Community College and Millsaps College, a Master of Arts in Music Education from William Carey College, and Level 1 ORF certification from the University of Memphis. She is a member of the American Choral Directors Association and has taught vocal music at all age levels in schools, churches, and in her private studio. She resides now in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And is David Carey here? Does anyone
I'm
see
not seeing David's name. Perhaps he will join us
Well, I'm
later,
hoping
though.
that David is going to join us because David is now the director of the Ballet Mississippi, which is a professional ballet school. And David was my former student. Began his ballet training with the Jackson Ballet under the direction of Albia Cavan Cooper. And he was later the first professional dancer under the direction of Thalia Mera. He completed his training at the School of American Ballet, the official school of the New York City Ballet. He was invited by George Balanchine to join the New York City Ballet, where he performed the extensive repertoire of that company, and his performances were seen on the PBS series Dance in America. When he returned to Mississippi, he took an undergraduate degree at Millsaps. That's where he and I met. And he later received a JD degree from the Mississippi College of Law, interning at the Supreme Court for Justice James W. Smith. But he returned to his first love in 1994 and has been the director of Ballet Mississippi ever since. In 2018, David was awarded the Mississippi Arts Commission Governor's Award for Leadership in the Performing Arts. So we'll hope he'll be here at some point. So let's talk just briefly about the Lehman Ingle Ballet, which was a production that was somewhat fraught. It took place one performance only on April 20th, 1968. Lehman was commissioned to write the libretto and the score and was enthusiastic about it, but then there was trouble because the ballet at that time was an amateur. Well, it wasn't Aunt Susan, it was amateur, right? It was an underfunded. I guess it had some professional dancers, but it was underfunded.
No professional dancers. We're all students, civilians.
Okay. And Lehman wanted, he had a major reputation as a conductor and composer in New York. He wanted a fuller orchestra that couldn't be afforded. He wanted more rehearsal time that couldn't be arranged. And so he said, well, he would do the score, he would do the libretto, but he wasn't coming to conduct. So they that never got mentioned in the newspapers, and the show went on, and it was a great hit here in Jackson. But it was
It
sort of
was also, Suzanne, it was also can I just say something? It was
sure.
also the opening of the auditorium.
Oh, okay.
It was also the opening of the new municipal auditorium. And the other activity was Aida with Richard Tucker from the Metropolitan. So it was a huge deal for the ballet to have an event on the real stage at the new auditorium.
All right, good. Yeah, and the ballet did go on to become a great success here in Jackson. So let's look at some slides of the ballet. I don't know if any of you were there, 1968. Anna, can you show us the
Working
slides?
on it just right now.
Right?
All right, so you should see that beginning slide now.
All right. And then we're going to look at a little, oh, this is not, we were going to cut this one out. This is a note. We were going to
Go
put,
back.
oh, here. Now here is Lehman Ingalls, the libretto. He sent it to Eudora, and Eudora sent it back to him with this note. Note to Lehman. The choreography ignored the fact that the birds with shoes could no longer fly. This explains why there are no lines to say this. Also, it omitted giving the something shoes. It omitted
The
giving the shoes to every bird, giving the fresh shoes, the something shoes to every bird. And so there's no mention of to get a prize, be a prize. That line is cut. Okay, let's look at the next one, Ann. And then she says, the parrot as dancer will not appear until scene 3. So lines here are awkward. So she's telling him the difficulties he's going to face because of the choreography that will go with his music and his libretto. All right. Then we have some pictures of the costumes as designed by Theo Inman for the birds. And I want to point out that this is Susan's sister, Nancy. I think, Susan, is that right? Yes. The 12-wired bird of paradise. All right. And I believe this is Miss Susan right here with the mother quail with her baby quails. And here we have some other scenes from the ballet. All right. Does anyone want to say anything about the Lehman Ingle Ballet? It would be interesting sometime if we could hear the score. I don't know that it was ever recorded. I did hear excerpts from it online. So anyone?
Anybody like for me to return to some
Yeah,
pictures
let's return to the full screen.
to full screen? Absolutely.
Yeah, let's drop all the slides and there we go. Now, Pearl, did you want to say something about Lehman Ingle?
I think that was the gold shoes for any bird. So what are we going to do about there's a prize?
Okay, good. Oh, good. The gold shoes. Thank you. I couldn't read it on the screen. Yeah. So it's about the goose not being able to have the gold shoes. Thank you. All right, Pearl, I always said that Mary Alice and I were the best readers of Eudora's handwriting, but I'm going to have to put you up there ahead of me right now. Anything else about the Lehman Ingle? Well, let's move on to talk about Sam Jones and Margaret Thomas and Eudora's fable, the shoe bird. Sam, I'm going to give you the first word here. Do you want to say anything about the shoe bird before we start asking you questions?
Just that it's a pleasure to be with you and to be with all of our viewers right now and to share the remarkable story that came from the wonderful, beautiful, fertile brain of Eudora Welty. This is such an imaginative use of the animals as characters in this fable, and it struck me that truly what she was doing was very similar to Aesop, the great fabler from ancient Greece. And so that's the reason that I gave this work the title Eudora's Fable. It's truly a story about very human feelings, but told through animals, and in this case, birds. And Eudora's incredible ability to capture with such a diverse and yet efficient strokes the personalities of each bird. And one can even, just reading it, one can see in your mind all the various birds and the characters. But then came the opportunity to turn it into more than just your own imagination, but to put this story on the stage, as it were, on the stage of a person's imagination through a narrator. And that was the brilliant idea of Margaret Thomas. Hi, Margaret.
Hi,
I'd
Sam.
like to ask Margaret what gave her this idea, and how did you approach Sam about it?
Well, I guess the history of that goes way back to our Millsaps days together. And my just being in total awe of Sam's talent back then. And I had followed his career through the years. And if I can just give some pinpoints in time to the things that led up to my calling Sam, I had been a choral director, but had left that behind, always loved it. And my husband and I heard a boy choir concert one night in Columbus, Mississippi. On the way home, he asked me, "Why don't you start a boy choir? You'd love that." And so I worked on that for 2 years. That was in 1993. So, Sam, it was 9 years in the making before we got to the 2002 performances. So I found out through going to schools all over the Golden Triangle area that boys really loved the idea of being in a boy choir. I had 234 auditions, and then a second audition later to gather the most talented. And in 1995, established the boy choir. In 1997, 98, it became apparent that it was difficult for families, mainly the families involved, to continue membership. And so membership declined. And I was on the lookout for what would help. I had gone to the American Boy Choir School for choral conferences and met lots of boy choir conductors, and was familiar with most of the successful programs in the country. Anyway, I was advised that commissioning a work that included orchestra would be newsworthy, and not just a piece, but a work. So that put it to 18, 20 minutes long. And with that decision made and the boy choir board's okay, I called Sam. And Sam, do you want to take it from there?
Well, excuse me. Pardon me, I had to prepare to talk. uh, well, I just, Margaret and I had been friends since Millsap's days. We were at, we were students at the same time, and even before that, your dad and my dad knew each other very well. They were both in education, and uh, and so it was like the second generation friendship that we recognized and became good friends while we were students. So that's there. That was kind of a prologue to all of this, and then we each went our separate ways, and you founded the boy choir, and I did a lot of conducting and composing in Rochester and various other places. But all of a sudden, I get a phone call from my dear friend Margaret, and she said, uh, "I I want you to write something for me." And she said, I said, well, what is it? She said, well, I want you to write a piece for our children's choir, our board choir. And I remember, Margaret, didn't I? At first, I turned it down. I think first I said, oh, I just don't have time to do this, Margaret. And it's true. I was busy as I could be conducting the 72 concerts a year with the Rochester Philharmonic. But she said she absolutely would not take no for an answer. She wrote me back and she said, "You are going to do this. You must do it. And I will not take no for an answer." I mean to tell you, I had run into a brick wall. And so and she said, I want you to set a wonderful children's story by Eudora Welty, and it just is waiting for your touch. And I will not take no for an answer. I may not have this absolutely verbatim correct, but I'm see you nodding. I see you nodding, Margaret. I know that I must be telling it pretty straight. And so I finally bowed to the superior uh, uh, forces, I guess I should say, of Margaret Thomas. And she said, no, no, this will become one of your most lovely and successful compositions. You must do this. Am I telling it correctly, Margaret?
Almost. I do know that my letter to you was over a page, single spaced.
That's right. Yes, it wasn't a phone call; it was a letter. She wrote me back, and basically denied me the privilege to not to do it.
I knew it was made for Sam. And
Yes.
sure enough, Sam, you remember all those calls you made to me as you got into the writing?
Yeah.
Oh, I could just see him filled with overflowing with joy as he sang through some of the songs that he was writing. And first of all was that delightful Shoes for the Birds that just impersonated the flitting about of birds.
That melody is, let me just sing it. Shoes are for the birds. Shoes are for the birds. Shoes are for the birds. Tell everybody. Shoes are for the birds. Shoes are for the birds. Let it. Da 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 da. What's that?
Would you like for me to play it, Sam?
Yes, yes.
Okie dokie. I'll make sure to do that. Let's see here. Would that be track 1, do you think?
I think it is.
I think so.
There was once a certain parrot named Arturo.
Oh, Arturo. Arturo. orchestral introduction.
Should I skip forward some minutes?
Look, no, go. Let me make a comment.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
And that theme, da-dee-da, was inspired by just the words and the rhythm of Arturo. One says Arturo, and the music goes da-da-da, the high note balancing the high pitch that one says when Arturo. That's how music comes. It comes out of the speech and the feeling of the words. That's how it comes, at least to me.
That's a wonderful thing about translate. You're really translating Eudora, and you're capturing her use of language in another form through music.
Exactly.
And it's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Would you like to listen to some more?
Over to you, dear. Anna, over to you.
All right.
Arturo the parrot worked in a shoe store. You know how parrots like to repeat everything they hear. Arturo was no exception. He repeated everything he heard, and that's why this whole story happened, as you are about to hear. One day, a little boy whose name was Robbie and his mother came to the store to buy Robbie a pair of shoes. Not a new pair of sneakers, he already had those, but a pair of dress-up shoes. Robbie was irritated. He wanted to be home playing with his collection of trading cards. When they left the store, he let everybody know how he felt. With an old-fashioned expression he had heard his mother use, he yelled sarcastically over his shoulder, "Shoes are for the birds!" Shoes are for the birds means something like, I don't like shoes, or shoes stink, or shoes yuck. But guess who heard what Robbie said? Arturo the parrot. And he thought, this is very interesting. Shoes are for the birds. For the birds? That's us. I must repeat this to all my friends. Or better yet, if I just tell Gloria the goose, she'll tell everybody. Shoes are for the birds. Shoes are for the birds.
That was quite loud in my ears.
For the birds, pass it on.
Pass it on.
That narrator of that particular recording is Jim Dale, who is an extremely famous and well-known narrator and a dramatic person based in New York. And he is the one who made that recording. The role of the author or the narrator has been taken by a number of people through the years, and very successfully. It was this particular performance with the Seattle Symphony and George Schwartz conducting. Do you have? Anna, show us.
That is the cover for it, with Jim Dale as the narrator and Gerald Schwartz. This is the one that we sell in the gift shop. So if there is any interest in having a physical copy, a CD to own, you can please feel free to send us an email, info@Eudora Welty House, and we'll help you purchase that from our gift shop with the Welty at Home discount. That is what we are
the whole
playing.
piece is about an hour long, just short, a couple of minutes short of an hour, which conductors is exactly the right length for a children's concert. Yep.
So, Sam, you were writing this for children's voices. Were you also writing it? Were you thinking of children as the audience, or were you thinking of a larger audience than children?
Both. Clearly, I had in mind it's perfect for children's concerts, and that's why I wanted to be sure that it stayed within an hour. It's 58 minutes, and if it's within an hour, then when the school buses bring the children from school downtown to the theater where the orchestra plays the children's concert, they can be out of there in an hour, and with the buses on the way back in time to take the regular passengers back to their homes. So there are lots of little items that one has to keep in mind when you're thinking about the dimensions of a work of art. But I wanted to keep it within an hour too. Um, the, at first, it was about 65 minutes or so, and my wife Kristen said, "Sam, you can't. It has to be within an hour." And she made me trim it, and she was right.
I thought you made great decisions of what to keep and what to cut. I know that was hard, but I thought your decisions were really good ones.
Well, thank you, thank you. Well, the decisions I made, wanted to be sure that the forward thrust of the story was there and not interrupted. But the characters are just so delightful. Eudora's characters, each is very clearly delineated with its own personality, and which she, of course, distilled, I would say, from the physical characteristics and the personalities of the birds themselves, and so each character, Arturo the parrot is just perfect, and then the each of the other little birds, it was so much fun to give them the personality that a specific melody could only provide.
Did you use
That's
specific instruments to
Oh
establish?
yes, oh yes. The English horn was Arturo, as those who listen to this will readily tell. And each bird has its own instrument. I don't have the list in front of me right now, but uh, the it's I and the reason for that too. Also, I wanted to use the piece to illustrate the specific instruments. The famous predecessor to this kind of thinking is, of course, Peter and the Wolf with Prokofiev. But he uses instruments the main instruments of the woodwind section. But I felt that this was an opportunity to introduce and illustrate the auxiliary instruments, the bass clarinet instead of just the clarinet, the English horn, the larger version of an oboe, and so that went into the thinking of my choice of instruments for each one.
Margaret, did you have any complaints for Sam?
Any what?
Did Margaret offer any suggestions to you, ask for any changes?
Oh,
Make
no,
any complaints?
Margaret, you didn't. I don't think you did you?
No, in the beginning, I made some comments that you certainly incorporated, and that had to do with my training of the voices of young boys who lived in this state where sports and hunting were idealized for boys, and they had no training to speak of. And so I was trying to teach the intervals so they could sing in tune. And I told Sam that the voices were high And at that time, the Mississippi Boy Choir was made up of only unchanged voices. So their register is high. And in addition, I offered the comment that I was trying to teach the intervals, and that whatever he incorporated into the melodies that they sang I would benefit if it expanded their training. So including augmented fourths, which are the most difficult to sing, and wide skips, which you heard in Shoes for the Birds. So those were comments, that I did mention to him in the beginning, and he certainly made it a difficult piece for little boys to sing.
I was going to say, it seems really ambitious to me, Margaret, a really ambitious.
Well, as I mentioned, I had been made aware of all these really successful and very fine boy choir programs in the country. And so I was trying to get our group up to their scale. And I must stop to say that the Shoebird was not my idea. When I began to look for the subject matter, and from what writings this music could be adapted, I asked my friend, the wonderful photographer, and at that time publisher of the Columbus Dispatch, Bernie Imes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, whose children had been in elementary school at the time when the second publication had come out. And sometime around 1995 or 6, their school had written themselves, the students had written themselves a version, a play. I don't know that they did any singing, but that Bernie was fresh off of that experience of guiding them and encouraging them. And so he didn't hesitate when I asked him if he had any suggestions. And so it was not my idea. I was not at that point even aware of the Shoebird, the story.
I bet his children were at the Mississippi School for Math and Science, and they did it. Emma Richardson did it, and Eudora attended that production. When the children.
I think it was at their elementary school.
Maybe so, but anyway, yeah.
And yeah, in watching the video that I'm sure the Imes took, they introduced her at the end, and she was on the second row. She stood up and didn't say a word. She just flapped her hands
to
the side, like a bird. And that was so appropriate. And I still smile when I think of her doing
that. So, Sam, I'm interested in the dodo bird. You give the dodo a wonderful piece when she first comes in, but then you bring her words back at the end of the piece, and so the dodo comes in twice. Could you talk about that? You add a section with the dodo that Eudora didn't have.
Well, the dodo, it seemed to me, was a very important and the wisest voice of all, and the one thinks of a dodo as not being very intelligent, and I felt that the irony of that, to have the most intelligent commentary coming from the dodo, was a lesson in and of itself. And in fact, the last words of at the very end, I'm holding the score just now. At the last few pages, let me just read the commentary. The as the little story ends, all of the birds in the air had come together for this grand meeting of all of the birds in the air, and then as they finish this meeting and fly away, some of them, it says in the quote I'm reading now, Eudora's words, some of them remembered their manners, and as they said over their wings as they flew away from the meeting, "Thanks for the nice party." Nice party. And then the narration continues, but as you might have expected, 3 of the birds remained behind. Arturo, because he worked in the shoe store. Gloria, his dear friend, because she wanted to help her best friend Arturo clean up and put away all the big pile of shoes. In the course of the story, they had pulled down all of the shoes to try to fit each bird's foot. And 3, Minerva, the owl, who wanted to talk with them about the fantastic experience they had just had. Minerva couldn't help it. She was always drawing a lesson from her experiences. That was what made owls so wise. And these are wonderful words of Eudora's. And what was the lesson that she drew from this story? Or to use the words of another great storyteller, these are my words now, what was the moral of this fable? Of course, I was referring to Aesop and Aesop's fables. Actually, Minerva found 2 lessons or morals. The first came from the phoenix, the firebird. And the moral is, in the question lies the answer. That's such an arresting thought. The answer is already present in the question. And the second was, don't ignore your special gift. And that was another important lesson that had come out earlier in the play. And then Arturo said, I found a moral too. Don't take everything at face value. and then Gloria spoke up with her moral, make the most of the brains you have. And then they all remembered the haunting message of the dodo. 2 things are stronger than death. And it's 2 thoughts, 2 things, 2 thoughts, 2 things. Those thoughts and those things are memory and love. Memory. The instruments take over. Da, da, da. And then it ends, memory and love. And the whole ensemble, memory and love. And then there's a little epilogue, and the melody for Arturo, Arturo, it goes, the orchestra brings it to a lovely little vigorous ending, dee, da-dum, bum, beam, da-dum, Arturo. Boom. And that's the end of the piece. I'm sorry, I'll try to sound like a whole
Well,
orchestra.
that
I'm not
was
sure I
great.
did.
Anna, can we play that?
Oh no, I can't. I'm first of all, I'm seated at my electric piano, but
Well, I
I
was saying
can't begin
Anna,
to see any of the notes because I'm using it as a desk.
I think Anna can play the clip, Sam.
Yeah, you put it on the recording. Yeah,
Yeah.
Anna, you have it at the very end.
Yeah.
For further information concerning this program,
In your question lies the answer, Gloria thought out loud. The answer is already in the question. What was the question? I think it had to do with our special gift, replied Minerva the owl. The jay had just asked, what special gift are you talking about?
I believe I know what Grandfather Phoenix was talking about,
said the goldfinch.
Did you see his magnificent wings as he flew away? It makes me want to use mine. Put-chick, put-chick.
But as hard as he tried, he couldn't soar and sail through the air as long as he had his shoes on. The heavy things kept him tied to the
Should I fast forward some?
Go forward. Yeah.
Keep
Okay.
going. It's great.
ground.
That's
Perhaps.
it. I heard a little boy in the store this morning say that shoes are for the birds. I guess I've learned that you have to look a little deeper to see what words really mean.
And if you just wouldn't repeat everything you hear, said Gloria dryly. You two, admonished Minerva, always carping at each other. If we took everything you said at face value, we'd never know you were best friends. Now, I think it's time for a vote. What say you, all the birds of the world? Shoes or no shoes?
No shoes! No shoes, no shoes. We want to fly up the sky. We want to see his rabbit wings. No shoes. We want to fly up the sky. We want to see his rabbit wings. No shoes, get us back our feet. No shoes, shoes are obsolete. Oh no shoes, oh no shoes.
And with that, all the birds of the air kicked off their shoes and flew in a magnificent cloud out the shoe store window and away, away, back to the four corners of the earth. Some of them remembered their manners and said over their wings as they flew away, "Thanks for the nice party." But as you might have expected, 3 of the birds remained behind. Arturo, because he worked in the shoe store. Gloria, because she wanted to help her best friend Arturo clean up and put away the big pile of shoes. And Minerva, who wanted to talk with them about the fantastic experience they had just had. She couldn't help it. She was always drawing a lesson from her experiences. That was what made owls so wise. And what was the lesson she drew from this story? Or, to use the words of another great storyteller, what was the moral of this fable? Actually, Minerva found 2 lessons, or morals. The first came from the phoenix. In the question lies the answer. And the second was, don't ignore your special gift. Then Arturo said,
I found a moral too. Don't take everything at face value.
And Gloria spoke up with her moral.
Make the most of the brains you have.
Then they all remembered the haunting message of the dodo.
2 things are stronger than death.
And that's the story of Arturo the shoebird and his friends. And they have continued to be best friends, even until this very day.
Wonderful.
I'm not sure which I prefer most. I did love hearing you sing it, Sam. It was wonderful to have the orchestra too. I think Joe Ellen had a question, and did you?
Go ahead, Margaret.
All right.
Well, I was just going to say that I believe it was Melissa who said last week in the reviews she went through that none of the reviews had mentioned the shoebird. Am I right about that? They were drawn to the firebird and the showy. And to me, this shows the depth of character. And I might tear up saying that, but I value so much the fact that Sam chose the words of the dodo and emphasized what is the benchmark piece to me in the whole work. Emphasizing memory and love, because it sums up human life and the meaning of it and what is most important. So that's what's last week.
Yeah, and what's most crucial in Eudora Welty's writing too.
Oh yeah. Oh, she would not have concluded those 2 things, and how prophetic it was of her and of him to recognize that as being the pinpoint of our existence.
Right. I was so glad when that came back up, Sam, the second time. So that's right. Now we have Joe Ellen and Pearl here.
Thank you so much, Sam. I loved listening to it. I was delighted to learn that Brilliance Audio had produced the CV from just down the road in Grand Haven, Michigan, of course. One quick question. I read recently that the shoebird and Peter and the Wolf are the only 2 pieces of their kind featuring animals. And I'll ask that first. Are you aware of that? Or is there anything else?
I don't know of another one, no. And I had, of course, the great image of my predecessor. That with uh, that story, Peter and the Wolf, is just so incredible, and the way that Prokofiev set it into music makes it just universal and timeless. And that was my goal in taking these marvelous words and incredible insights of our dear friend. And she was my dear friend. We had Eudora and I. I have to tell a quick story. When I was a college student, a freshman, uh, uh, an upperclassman in my fraternity, he said, "You know, we had we were doing an assignment of some kind of little dramatic play." He said, "Let's go, talk to Eudora Welty. She'll help us do this, help us write it." The effrontery of that story still makes me blush to this day. But here we go, knocking on her door, absolutely unannounced. And she so graciously took us in and listened to and then helped us with our little skit. And so that was the way I introduced myself. I blush to think to the great Eudora Welty and her wonderful reception. That was the first of our many associations. Later, then, when I was setting her wonderful, wonderful story, the
Wanderers.
Hmm?
Wanderers.
Yeah, From the Wanderers. And right now I'm just having what at my advanced age, I call the great gray curtain. The great gray curtain comes down when you're trying to think of a name. Have you ever experienced that, Suzanne?
I certainly have.
In any event, that story of hers is just a wonderful one. And so there we were talking to Eudora Welty, and she was just, it was a lifetime experience. But then we became dear friends when I began setting her other work, and particularly this is again where the great gray curtain is coming down. I have 3 or 4 other major compositions, all based on her words, and she loved every one of them, and made a special trip to Greensboro, North Carolina, when that school did a wonderful performance of The Trumpet of the Swan, and she and I palled around for 2 or 3 days, just having the greatest time. And what a dear person and a dear close friend, and our collaboration meant a great deal to me, and I think, and in fact, I know that it did to her too.
Well,
Thank you.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Suzanne.
Oh, no, you go.
Oh, I just wanted to thank you for asking the question about the dodo being added at the end. That was something I was going to do, and it's so important. I think that the dodo gets overshadowed by the phoenix in the story, and so that was wonderful. But I would like to know, are you aware that Eudora Welty's pet name by her nieces was Dodo?
Yes, I knew that.
Okay.
That's right.
Thanks.
Earl, you have a question.
I remember her telling us a story how that she loved to hear people talk, and she told me that she would sit in the back seat of the car when the family was going somewhere, and she would say, "Now talk," to them, because she wanted to hear their conversation. She just soaked it up as a child, even, the every inflection and every choice of word. She was just that magnificent brain of hers was recording it for future use, even when she was a child. Incredible.
Earl.
Sam and Eudora were made for each other. No doubt about that. They were on the same wavelength in interpreting they're stories, Sam in his musical way that, just this magnificent ear of his. And
It's a special thing to be able to take one art form and transform it into another. And Eudora had a great ear, but so do you, Sam. So
Well, thanks, dears.
now I'm
You
gonna
guys
talk.
are good for a fellow's ego, particularly an old guy. I don't know if you realize you're talking to a 90-year-old man. I just turned 90.
Excellent.
May we all be so sharp at 90, I'll tell you that.
Great. You will be, I can tell.
I don't know about that. Pearl, I'm going to let Pearl have the last word here.
Well, I was just going to ask too, if when you were thinking about the dodo bird, you were intoning that Eudora was called Dodo by her nieces and her friends. But Jo Ellen already asked that. So I'll just conclude my comment by saying this was just so marvelous. And I thank Suzanne and also for thinking about putting it together this way. So thank you so much, Margaret and Sam. This has just been absolutely marvelous to have this inside
Yes.
view of what it's like to compose something with so many of these factors in mind. And as a teacher early on, I'm so appreciative of you thinking about that 60 minutes.
Yes.
Well, I will just close by saying the memory is a living thing, and during its moment, all that lives joins the past and the present. Oh, I'm going to get it in the wrong order. The old and the young, the past and the present. Oh, the past and the I can't remember.
Living in the day.
We'll look at the end of one writer's beginnings and find it. Yeah, but so those words too. Thank you all for joining us, and more next time. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Margaret.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, everybody.
And thank Anna.
Thank you, Anna. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all so much. Keep an eye on your email for next week's readings, where we will begin talking about reviews. I will be sending out PDFs of those. You can see in the chat where I mentioned ways that you can access Samuel Jones' recording of his score, both the Seattle Symphony as well as Palm Beach Symphony's recordings of that. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, info@eudorawelty.com. I look forward to seeing you guys again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.